Call to order, councillors. It is now 9 o'clock. So while you're just getting comfortable and we're making sure that the live streaming's working, just ask everyone to turn their mobile devices to silent. Today's meeting has been arranged to accommodate the health orders in relation to the COVID-19 response in New South Wales, and this meeting will be conducted as a hybrid Zoom meeting at the Chamber Gallery. Is limited in numbers for the public, but there is no one from the public in the gallery today. I'd just like to ask the General Manager if he could just give a COVID update.
It just for more members of the public that may be watching, the public health order allows people who are double vaccinated to work in office areas without masks on. We have cited the vaccination certificates of all those present in the chamber, and therefore the meeting can run without the councillors or the staff wearing masks. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. So, welcome to our October 2021 Kempsey Shire Council meeting. For anyone joining us online for the first time, council meetings are live streamed to allow people to observe council in the decision-making process. And it's a regulatory requirement for me to advise anyone present that your attendance is taken as consent to the possibility that your image and or voice may be recorded and broadcast to the public via our live stream. Any visual and or sound recordings of this meeting do require prior permission, and that decision to allow must be a unanimous decision of council. Council will break at approximately 10:30 to allow council and staff a short break between the meeting. In the chambers today, we have Councillor Dean Saul, Councillor Sue McGinn, Councillor Mark Baxter, Deputy Mayor Anthony Patterson, myself, Liz Campbell, the Mayor and Chairperson, and we're joined by our Director Operation and Planning. No, we're not. Unfortunately, our Director of Operation and Planning won't be joining us today, but the Director Corporate and Commercial, Stephen Mitchell, the General Manager, Craig Milburn, the Manager for Governance and Information Services, Daniel Thorogood, and we also have Jenna Passmore, our EA to the Mayor's office in attendance. So welcome councillors, General Manager, the executive team and staff. Oh, I'll get to them. By Zoom, we are joined by Councillor Bruce Morris and Councillor Leo Horville. So welcome everyone. And good morning and welcome to anyone joining the live stream telecast. Reminder, councillors, that voting will be called for any dissent. Non-dissent vote is an affirmative. Abstaining vote is recorded as a vote against. If there's no dissent votes, the motion will pass unanimously. Please activate your microphones when you have been acknowledged to speak. And we will formally begin the meeting with the opening prayer. Dear Lord, help us in our deliberations today so that our decisions will be for the greater good for the whole of the Kempsey Shire. Amen. And Kempsey Shire Council acknowledges the land of the Thungadi-Dungadi Nation. We pay respect to the elders past and present. We acknowledge the role of emerging leaders to continue to guide us in the future. We acknowledge the stolen generation and the need to change practices to be inclusive. This land always was and always will be Thungadi-Dungadi land. We have two notifications for leave of absence and apologies and applications to leave for today, which is from Councillor Anna Shields and Councillor Ashley Williams.
Move that way.
I have a mover, which was Councillor McGinn and seconded by Councillor Patterson. Is there any dissent on accepting these apologies? There's no dissent. That has been carried. Item number 4, which is the recommendation for the acceptance of the minutes of the ordinary meeting of September.
Second that.
It's been moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor McGinn. I believe Councillor Horville has his hand up. Councillor Horville?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I want to move a minor amendment, please.
And the amendment is?
I have just emailed it through to Mr. Thorogood. I would add to 8.1 Local Traffic Committee Minutes, 7th of September 2021. Add Councillor McGinn raised a point of order that Council should not be micromanaging the Traffic Committee. The Chair did not uphold the point of order.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Morris? I don't recall it either.
Madam Mayor, may I speak, please?
Yes, Councillor.
It was number of point of orders were raised out throughout the meeting, but this one was at the timestamp was 13.27, and it was something about whether we should be discussing any recommendations from the Traffic Committee, and that's where Councillor McGinn thought we shouldn't be micromanaging. So that's why she made the point of order.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have any speakers against?
Madam Mayor, through you, Madam Mayor, to the General Manager, will this change any decision made by Council on the day? Through you, Madam Mayor, no.
Thank you. I am actually going to abstain from voting because I don't recall exactly, and I would need to go back and have a look. And it's just being brought up now. We've had plenty of time to bring that up prior to the meeting. So I'm actually going to abstain from voting, which means I'm going to record it as a dissent on the vote. Councillor Morris.
Madam Mayor, I'd just like to move another amendment. It's only a fairly minor procedural one, which I only picked up just recently. On page, I think it's...
Councillor Morris, can we just deal with this amendment first?
Well, you asked me what I wanted to do, and I'm quite happy to do that.
Thank you, Councillor Morris.
I put up my hand because if I didn't, we would have voted on it and wouldn't have had the opportunity because it seems to go through very quickly otherwise.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. We'll just move this, we'll take this and then we'll take, you're moving your amendment. So we've got notification of your new amendment. Councillor Horval.
Madam Mayor, may I ask a question of Councillor McGinn in that, does she remember moving that point of order?
Yes, Councillor McGinn.
I would need to go back and have a look. I can't recall the exact words or timing.
Thank you, Councillor.
And it would be more on the response, I think, that was to that point anyway.
Thank you. Okay, so we have this amendment. Is there any dissent on this amendment?
Two abstentions.
So we have 3 against, 2 abstentions. The amendment's been lost. So, Councillor Morris.
Madam Mayor, just a fairly minor procedural one. When we had the voting for the Deputy Mayor, the General Manager made the comment that he declares Councillor Anthony Patterson elected as Deputy Mayor prior to calling for voting for Councillor Horval. The minutes reflect that in the other way, with the voting for Councillor Horval being called before the General Manager declaring the Anthony Patterson elected as Deputy Mayor. I believe that those 2 lines should be reversed. They're on page 9. I can clearly remember that happening, and in fact, I can clearly remember Councillor Horval then questioning the fact that prior to votes being taken for him, the General Manager declared the position of Deputy Mayor.
Just a question, Madam Mayor.
Yes, quick question. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. It's been seconded by Councillor Horval. Yes, I have a question first.
Does changing the minutes make any difference to the outcome of the election?
Absolutely not. What occurred was that the votes were very clear. It was very clear at that point that Councillor Patterson was elected the Deputy Mayor because of the votes, and then it was just purely a formality. Whether they're in the current order as they are on the top of page 10 or swapped around, it makes absolutely no difference whatsoever.
Do you wish to speak to your amendment, Councillor Morris?
Madam Mayor, I believe it's important that we should just at least reflect how things happen in the meeting. I appreciate it makes no difference to the outcome, but what actually happened is not as it is recorded in the minutes. And I believe the minutes should record what actually happens, not what doesn't change any of the outcomes. Otherwise, we could just change things around the world.
Again, I'd just like to ask the manager of governance, because we have a clear procedure where if you have something that you think needs to be changed, something like this, which is quite minor, the procedure would be to notify the.
I would have done that last night at midnight, at 10 o'clock when I was reading it and realised it. I didn't previously pick it up. I picked it up when I reviewed it last night at about 10 o'clock. So if email at 10 o'clock last night would have made a difference. I'll do that.
We can simply make that change without any need for any amendment.
Thank you, General Manager. So that change will be made. But I will go through the process of the amendment. Is there any dissent from the amendment? I'm going to abstain. You abstaining? He's still an amendment, Councillor.
Amendment's on the floor.
He hasn't withdrawn it. You've got to vote on it. So you are voting against? Yes, there is. There an amendment on the floor.
When you have to vote. I'm 3 against, 3 against, and 2 abstentions.
So the amendment has been lost. But the General Manager has said that.
Madam Mayor, I voted against it because it's a complete waste of council's time to do these.
Point of order. We'll go through the process. Okay, so we now have a motion. Is there any dissent on the motion? There's no dissent. Oh, there's one dissent. The confirmation of minutes has been accepted and passed. We may now move to number 5, the disclosure of interest. Is there any disclosures of interest? Yes, Councillor McGinn.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I have non-significant, non-pecuniary interest. 0.14, the road classifications and transfer, as I live on one of the roads that's mentioned, and 11.1 in legals, as I'm known to one of the parties.
Councillor Baxter, and then I'll take Councillor Patterson, and then I'll take Councillor Hall.
A pecuniary interest, Chair, in 9.2, the Herald Circuit.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Patterson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I declare a non-pecuniary, non-significant interest in 9.1 Adventure Park, as I live within 5 kilometres radius from the site.
Thank you. I'll take Councillor Horval and then Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move or declare a non-pecuniary and what's the other one?
Non-significant.
Non-significant. Thank you very much. I had a mind blank there. In 9.1 and 10.1, which is dealing with the airport, because I live within 5 kilometres of the airport.
Councillor Morris.
Likewise, Madam Mayor, non-significant, non-pecuniary for 9.1 and 10.1 due to the fact that I live within 5 kilometres from the airport.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. We move on to item number 6, which is the items passed by exception. Before we adopt any of these, I must list the items for adoption and ask the councillors if there's any ones that they would like to withdraw, or if there's any questions that would like to be answered. So we have 9.4, which is the Reconciliation Action Plan. And just for our viewers and for a reminder that because these are passed by exception doesn't mean to say that they're any less significant than any of the others. And the reconciliation plan is one example where that is really important and is of great benefit for the community to look at. And I think it's appropriate that we thank the participants and the staff. There's now an established framework for us to endorse this and develop a RAP for Kempsey, which has been a while coming, but I think it's really worthwhile everyone taking the time to look at it and understand it. So we have 9.4, we have 9.5.
Madam Mayor, may I withdraw 9.4 because I would like
I'll ask for withdrawals at the end when I've read them.
You.
9.5 is the voluntary house raising scheme. 9.6 is the Service New South Wales partnership agreement. 9.7 is the 2021 local event day and public holiday. Sorry, 2022. Thank you, Councillor. 9.8 is the Council Office Libraries and Depot 2021 Christmas New Year close down. 9.9 is the delegation of authority to the General Manager. 9.10, Acting General Manager appointments. 9.11 is the disclosure of interests returns. And 9.12 is the MACLEAY Valley Coast Economic Development and Tourism Strategy Horizon 2030 Progress Update. And likewise, I think that is another document that really needs the community to understand, and if they get an opportunity to have a look at it, it has been some time in the development. It's really pleasing to see that once you have a plan and you start to work to the plan, you can start ticking off some of the things that are in that plan. Then we go on to the quarterly development activities statistics, the New South Wales Road Classification Review, the MNCJO update. That's another one that I would encourage people to have a look at if they get a chance. Despite being the smallest JO, we've kicked some really good goals in a short couple of years. And I must say that the board members and the commitment of the GMs, it's a voluntary positions that we've taken, takes a lot of our time, but it is really well worth it. And then we have the statement of cash and investments, which is a regular one, and then our legal matters, which is 11.1, 11.2, which is part of the legal matters, is audit and risk committee meeting minutes, the regional matters collection and processing. There's a tender for South Kempsey Pressure Sewer Scheme construction, the tender for the provision of switchboard manufacturing services, the tender for the provision of instrumentation services tender, and the provision of electoral telemetry and automation services. So that is the ones that we have. I will take withdrawals and any questions if you don't need to withdraw and you want to just ask questions before withdrawing. For a start, I would like to withdraw 9.14, which is the roads classification and review transfer. So I'd like that one withdrawn. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have a question on 9.4.
Yes, Councillor.
I'm just wondering when the reconciliation action plan was established by our federal government.
Through Madam Mayor, we'd have to take that on notice.
Okay. Yeah, but I just trying to understand the process.
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
And then.
Yes, Councillor.
Madam Mayor, just the point of order is I think we should withdraw the items first and then ask questions. If we withdraw the items, we're dealing with it later, and I want to withdraw 9.4. So questions, when we come to that, could be dealt with at that point of time. Just a suggestion for.
I will take that. Yes, I will take that.
Right.
So you want to draw 9.4?
And 9.7 and 11.4, Madam Mayor. I was going to withdraw 9.14, but you've already done that, so thank you.
So the other one, I've got 9.4, 9.7, and the other one?
11.4.
11.4. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Morris.
Madam Mayor, I would like to withdraw 9.5, 9.8 and 9.9.
Thank you. So what we have is now 9.6, Service New South Wales. We have 9.10, the Acting General Manager appointment, the disclosure of interest returns, the Economic and Development Tourism Strategy, the Quarterly Development Activities Statistics, the MNCJO update, the Statement of Cash and Investments, and in the legal matters we have the Audit and Risk Committee, the Regional Collection and Process, and we also have all the tender documents except for 11.4.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councillor.
Madam Mayor, you didn't mention 11.1.
11.1, which is the legal matters, which is the whole, what we just went through.
Legal matters is one item of confidential.
Oh, okay. Is the one item to go in for confidential?
So all the items 11 are all under confidential. That's the first confidential.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Yes. So we know, or whatever it is, whatever the resolution is. You're correct. 11.1. Yes. Thank you, General Manager, for pointing that out. Councillor Patterson.
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just 9.13 hasn't been withdrawn, has it? No. So can I ask a question on that?
Absolutely.
Just on a question to the General Manager about some DAs taking a little bit longer than normal. I've had a few questions asked to me by builders and the general public about some issues with being held up for a little bit extra time getting a DA through council. Have you got a comment on that, General Manager?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Patterson. We are experiencing a high volume of DAs currently, and there's a number of factors that are impacting our ability to deal with those as efficiently as we wish to. One is the volume. There's also a number of complex DAs, which obviously take more time than just a standard house or something like that. So that does take greater time as well. We are attempting to get additional resources, but there's actually a statewide shortage on planners at the moment. So trying to get resources to do this work is also difficult. We do have at times delays when matters are needing to be referred externally, because again the state government's got a huge amount of work on at the moment and they're trying to keep up as well. And some DAs can be held up if we haven't received all the information, the correct information, and we're going backwards and forwards with the applicant. So there's a number of reasons that have put us in the position where we are at the moment, where we are a little bit behind in terms of getting the DAs out that we wish to, but we're making every attempt to actually get that work done.
So you're still getting a lot of DAs out. It's just that we've got lots and lots coming in. That's the positive side of it is that there's a lot of development happening in the Kempsey Shire.
Wonderful.
Fantastic.
Madam Mayor,
Councillor Hall.
could I ask a question on the same item, please, Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councillor.
Yes, I couldn't hear you, sorry.
Yes, I said yes, Councillor.
Oh, okay, thank you. On the statistics page there, Mr. General Manager or Director Fish, in July, the number of DTAs determined within 40 days was down to 9, which is 31%, which is, and it's explained in the report. Is it solely to do with the fact that we are switching over to a new system, or were there other factors involved with that low number for July? It's on page 43.
Yep. Yeah, the main factor would have been the changeover to the portal and our changeover to Greenlight, but it would have also been impacted with our resourcing levels and the other comments I just made previously in response to Councillor Patterson's question.
And the other issue that seems to be with our numbers, Mr. General Manager, on page 44, in the last paragraph, it talks about this time that private certifier statistics are not included in this last quarter data. Will they be in the future, or have we been excluded from having that information? Because to me, and I presume the rest of us, it seems pertinent that we know how many buildings are being certified by private certifiers.
I'll take that on notice, Councillor Hall, because I'm not aware that we include the private certifiers historically on this anyway, but I'll take that on notice and come back to you.
Well, it says there, whereas in the past it has been, Mr. General Manager. So,
Councillor Hall, your question has been answered.
Yes, it has, Madam Mayor. I was just saying I'm referring to the report. So,
Councillor Hall, your question has been answered. Okay.
Yep.
And Councillor Baxter.
Another question, Madam Mayor, if I could, on the same issue.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Baxter. Yes, your next question.
Oh, okay. Me. Thank you. On page top of page 44, it talks about 7 applications were withdrawn, including the tourist accommodation facility proposed by the South West Rocks Country Club. Has the market garden proposal been withdrawn, or is it still an operational DA waiting for finalisation?
Through Madam Mayor, Mr. Fish isn't here to respond to that. I'll take that on notice.
Right, thank you, Mr. General Manager. I couldn't see. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask some questions on 9.6, the service centre and council partnership, which I think is a wonderful initiative. In the attachment, I think is coming up now, in the actual document, which is the partnership agreement, if you go to page 3 of the attachment, you see at point 5 there, it says at B1 on point 5, the council will refer eligible customers to the program. Just wondering if the director could explain how that relationship is going to work, whereby our relationship with the service centre and us regarding supporting the start-up of small businesses, etc.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Baxter, this agreement, as the report says, is essentially a continuation of the existing arrangement that we've had in place with Service New South Wales. My understanding of that clause specifically is just sort of stating that council will obviously just, any of those customers who would be eligible will refer them to Service New South Wales so they can participate in that program, and that'd be something that would happen as a result of the work that our economic development and tourism team do in terms of the work with local businesses. So it's, as far as I understand it, just a simple sort of capture that of that role that we would play in terms of referring those businesses to the Service New South Wales so they could participate in the program.
And the program is helping those businesses find grants and helping them actually start the business. Is that it?
Well, it's a whole easy, making things easier for small business, and so there's a whole suite of services which are listed within the agreement, but also captured in the report, which that's in front of you.
Wonderful. I think it's a wonderful initiative. Anything that can streamline and encourage more industry, more businesses. Can I ask a second question, Chair?
Certainly, Councillor.
9.12, if we could look at the attachment, the wonderful attachment, the wonderful economic development strategy that is, it's an astonishing achievement. It's a battle plan for our valley. And could I ask a question on theme 1? Theme 1. Theme 1.5. Can you see 1.5 there? Thank you, sir. Where you've got action to date, helping Aboriginal tourism and one-day marketing, and the third one there, business accelerator and business mentoring. Could you expand on those three bullet points, please?
Mr. Mitchell.
Through you, Madam Mayor. In relation to the first one, Councillor Baxter, the Aboriginal Tourism Experience Development, that's a 2-day workshop that had been scheduled to occur next month, but has been rescheduled to 2022 just due to the COVID situation. But that workshop is targeted at Aboriginal tourism operators, and so in terms of providing them support and assistance in terms of getting into the tourism industry. So that's a targeted workshop that is to be held at Southwest Rocks.
Wonderful.
The one-day marketing program has already occurred. We engaged a presenter and digital marketer by the name of Dante St. James, and that workshop again was intended to be face-to-face. It was delivered online, and geared towards over one day providing local businesses sort of that opportunity around digital marketing upskilling, and so that occurred earlier this year. And I think we had in excess of 30 participants participate in that program, and it was very well received, as I understand it.
Wonderful.
And was it the third one that you talked about?
The business accelerator and business mentoring.
Yeah, so that was via Destination North Coast. Council Baxter was a grant to set up that program, again designed to support individual tourism businesses via mentoring, and so they can have a dedicated mentor to support them in terms of in terms of every step that they take in terms of running their business. So these are just, I guess, some of those examples around how our economic development team are working with local businesses in terms of trying to grow their businesses.
Wonderful. Thank you, sir. That's just a couple more questions on this wonderful document. At 1.13, the action to date. Daniel, can we get a 1.13? The action to date mentions working with NBN to advise local businesses to join a regional tech hub. Does that mean that our valley can access the fastest internet speed available? Is that what that means there?
Through you, Madam Mayor, this action is just around giving businesses the tools so they can investigate what's the best internet connection for them. So it's basically giving them the ability to investigate and make the right decisions.
Wonderful, wonderful. But could we go to 1.22? At 1.22, Council is encouraging Indigenous to create businesses out of the sign making and the nature trails. So I just want to ask, with that sign making and the nature trails, are we helping the Indigenous create businesses there, or we're actually creating the trails and the signs ourselves?
Through you, Madam Mayor, can't quite see the reference to encouraging businesses. That's about the wrap.
See that last column, sir. Landowners. Is it nature trails mentioned there?
Yeah, so the nature trails in the middle. So that's the project we're doing in terms of the nature trail signage project, which is across our coastal villages in Kempsey and at 2 of our upriver locations, so Willawarren and Bellbrook. So that's around the development and implementation of those signs, which will be obviously a sort of a key tourism asset for us, as well as will play a key role from a reconciliation action plan perspective, at least in terms of acknowledging our Indigenous community.
So we're doing the signs and the trails.
Yes, that's a that's a grant fund that we've got, grant funding that we've got to deliver that project.
Okay, thank you, sir. 1.28. Please, Daniel. 1.28. This is a fantastic document. 1.28. Could you expand on the four points in the action to date? Working with Indigenous businesses, working closely with New South Wales Aboriginal Liaison Officer to encourage local Aboriginal businesses. Is that so? That's actually happening now, is it?
Yes, correct. That's what's in that column. So the middle column is giving an update on things that have been undertaken, are well progressed, whereas the column on the right-hand side, Councillor Baxter, are those future actions that we're still to action and implement. This is obviously a long-term strategy that was adopted 2 years ago. So the purpose of this update was to give councillors and the community a general update around the progress in terms of implementing the economic development and tourism strategy. As I said, it's a longer term strategy. It's got a number of actions, and a lot of these have been progressed. And I guess in relation to those 4 points, that's an update of those items that have actually progressed. And some of them we've already sort of covered. So you can see that tourism experience, that workshop that was referred to, that I've already answered in one of your previous questions, for example, that's one of those items there, as is the Nature Trails program. So
that November 9 and 10 workshops actually going to happen?
That's the one that I referred to that's being deferred until next calendar year because of COVID.
Right. Okay, yeah. Thank you, sir. It's wonderful that so much is happening to help Indigenous develop some employment opportunities. Lastly, just one more thing on that. 3.8, please, Daniel. 3.8. Again, this is a wonderful effort to help with Indigenous employment. So there in the middle column, the action to date, helping Indigenous businesses finding grants, that's happening now.
Sorry, Councillor Baxter, I'm trying to
look at which point you're referring. Third bullet point in the middle column.
Yes, I believe so.
That's wonderful. So
just have the update on that. Yeah.
I'd like to compliment the economic development team that put all this effort to help the Indigenous situation in this valley. It fits in nicely with the reconciliation policy, and it's wonderful that so much is happening to address Indigenous unemployment, etc. Our last three questions, Director, it's 3.1. If we could go back to 3.1, Daniel. At 3.1.
3.1.
That 5 Headlands trail, that's actually happening. Business case, so we're developing a business case for the 5 Headlands trail. That's happening now.
Yes, that's correct. So we that business case is well progressed. We're hoping that the audit that accompanies that business case and the business case will be completed by the end of this calendar year.
Wonderful. And just with 3.2, activating the MACLEAY River, that third column, the future priorities of preparing a master plan for the river and advance a business case for the river. That's wonderful that we're doing that. And the last question, Chair, Director, 3.3, in the last column for the MACLEAY Valley Venture Sports Strategy. Yeah, in the third column, thank you. The ability to leverage with the other sporting events in the valley, like the High Performance Centre and the Verge Street development, that's going to what that's saying is we want to create a sports attraction to the valley. Is it as a attract businesses or events to the valley?
Yes, that's essentially what we're actually saying. So in terms of being able to host sort of
big events.
further events in the future, so that we get that sort of economic boost that that we're after. And so, I guess to the extent that we can leverage all of our sporting assets around that, will help in the delivery of better economic outcomes.
Yeah, better employment. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Chair. Those are the questions.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. I did have some notes here, and it's just a comment. Without this community developed and well articulated plan, it would have been absolutely impossible for us to argue for the funding for our Country University Centre and our Adventure Park in the days after the summer 2019 bushfires. We had just adopted that plan. I had occasion to speak to people that said, well, what's your plan? What do you want to do? What's your economic development look like? We could immediately take them to the Horizon 2030 plan. So it's because we had a plan and because we had a vision, and then we were able to attract that funding. Without it, we wouldn't have had a hope. So we need to congratulate the community for putting us first in touch with what we did want as the vision for Horizon 2030, and then the staff for how they've enacted that plan.
Here, congratulations.
Can I
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, thank you for that. I was just suggesting that if there are any other questions on this, we ask those now while we've got that document up before we move on to another one.
I was just about to ask your questions. Councillor Hobble, I did see your hand up, but Councillor Baxter, do you have any other questions? Your questions are on the next other items.
I'm finished with that item. Yeah, I just wanted to come in on the back of what you just said, in the sense that to have a 10-year strategic plan is fantastic. It's what the Valley really needed, and that you're right, the staff are to be congratulated.
Yes, Councillor Hobble.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Baxter, for your questions. Very enlightening, the answers. On page 41, it actually shows you the Horizon 2030 MACLEAY Valley Coast Economic Development Tourism Strategy, and it's got 7 modules that have been developed or are planned to be developed. 3 of them haven't been developed yet. When can we expect those to be completed, and is there a staffing issue, Mr. General Manager, and having enough staff to complete these important documents?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll get Mr. Mitchell to give an overall reply with that. It certainly has to do with resources and timing, but resources are also relevant to budget constraints. Mr. Mitchell.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So, yes, just in relation to those items that are indicated as being sort of plans that sit underneath the overarching economic development and tourism strategy. So all of the ones from the visitor servicing strategy and the marketing strategy and tourism plan have all been completed, and I think councillors have had a briefing or several briefings in relation to that in terms of what was intended, and then the achievements that have been made as a result of the implementation of both of those strategies. The MACLEAY Valley Agribusiness Industry Plan has just been drafted. It was considered our executive leadership team meeting yesterday. That agribusiness industry plan will now go out on public exhibition. So we're intending to put that out for exhibition for comments from the general public. We'll also do targeted sort of stakeholder consultation, given the nature of that plan. And so over the next, that'll be out for comment for a period of 2 to 3 months, obviously taking into account that we've got the Christmas New Year period. So we'll give the community and those key stakeholders ample opportunity to provide their comments on that agribusiness industry plan. And then that will come back to the new term of council at this stage, hopefully to the February or at the latest the March council meeting. The specific industry action plans that sit underneath that obviously wouldn't be progressed until that overarching agribusiness industry plan is adopted. So to the extent that there's any comments that changes the draft of that industry plan, then that may change some of the specific industry action plans that sit underneath that. Those specific plans will be implemented. After that overarching plan has been adopted, and that obviously depends on our resources to do that. The right-hand side items in relation to the business and industry plan, and then the specific plans that sit underneath that will be something that we'll look to action over the next sort of 12 or so months. In relation to Councillor Horville's question, which the General Manager touched on, our Economic Development and Tourism team is quite small. So we have a sort of permanent staff in that team of 3 full-time equivalent staff. So it is small. They are achieving a significant amount given those resources, and particularly in the context of also supporting the community and our local business and tourism providers through the COVID pandemic, which I think is sort of came out in some of the questions that Councillor Baxter answered. So we've got a clear plan in terms of moving those forward. We've approached them in the order that we think we'll get maximum benefit from doing that. It's just that with a small team and the resources that are available to that team, they can't all be developed at once. And probably just the last thing I would say about that is that we've taken an approach, whilst the overarching economic development and tourism strategy was pulled together with the assistance of consultants, the management plans that sit underneath that for those 3 key streams, and then the sub-plans under that have all been developed in-house by staff. That obviously has a cost benefit, but has a fantastic benefit for us in that there's ownership from the staff, and there's that knowledge built for the staff, so that as they continue to work within our economic development team, they have full ownership and understanding of those actions. So whilst it may be a bit slower to progress some of those, we get a better outcome longer term.
Can I just make a quick comment? It is a 10-year plan too. I wouldn't expect everything to be started if you've got a 10-year plan.
Councillor, thank you. Councillor Horville hadn't completed.
Yeah,
but thank you.
Yes, Councillor. Madam Mayor, one final question, possibly to Director Mitchell or General Manager. Would it be possible for you to pass on Council thanks to that small team that have come up with these fantastic documents so far, and wish them well with the future work? Would you be able to do that?
Bill.
Thank you. Is there any further questions? Okay. Is there any dissent on the recommendation?
Oh, Madam Mayor, question. I thought you were asking questions. I apologise. Questions about that particular subject. I want to ask some questions about the voluntary house raising scheme 9.5. Oh, that's been withdrawn, hasn't it?
It has.
Sorry, Madam Mayor.
That's okay. Okay, is there any dissent on the recommendation?
No, Madam Mayor, there's one final one I had to ask a question about. It's the Mid-North Coast Joint Organisation.
And your question is?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd rather not do external stuff, but it's a complication way of doing it. So it's 9:15. It's quite concerning, the fact that, and it's in the report, that we have only 3 members of the Mid-North Coast Joint Organisation. And on page 52 in the report, and key considerations, in the second paragraph of the key considerations, it says the Mid-North Coast Joint Organisation will soon undertake a cost-benefit analysis on the sustainability of continuing to operate with only 3 member councils. What can this council do to encourage more councils to join this?
I think as councillors, if you ever have the opportunity to talk to other councils, actually we've moved quite some ways in our relationship with Nambucca Heads and with Coffs Harbour. And I think the new term of council will see that seeing the benefit of being in the MNCJO has bought. If you get the opportunity to advocate that it is worthwhile being in the JO, that's something that the councillors could do from a council level. The General Manager and myself and the other participants in the JO have spent an enormous amount of time, and we continue to advocate that the other two councils particularly join us. We also work closely with them on a number of projects. We don't exclude them. So that relationship is ongoing and continuing.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could,
there is one other thing.
sorry.
I don't know whether it was highlighted in here. There is a review underway that was supposed to be handed down in November of all the JOs. Actually, we're punching well above our weight for a JO of 3 councils, so we're not in a really particularly bad position, actually. But the review has been delayed. There is a JO chairs meeting next week, so I will be attending that and we'll get more information.
So, Madam Mayor, just finally there, the cost-benefit analysis, when will that be undertaken? Will it be within the next 6 months? Because I presume that one of the options is to withdraw from the GAO or close it down or do something more innovative to bring more money in. So how soon will that cost-benefit analysis be completed?
There is no set time frame. At this point, if you read the document, medium term, financially, we're okay.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Saul.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On that point you were referring to earlier about the JO, Nambucca and
Coffs
Harbour councils, what JO are they in? Can you elaborate, please?
They're not in a JO.
So they're just on by themselves. Well, hopefully, with a change of mind, the next election, they may consider coming down to joining our 3. It'd be wonderful then.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councillor.
There are a couple of questions I wanted to ask on confidential matters. I'm quite happy for them to go ahead, but may I still ask them in confidential?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a recommendation. We have moved. I think it was Councillor. I don't know which way it was. Councillor Patterson first, I believe. Was that correct, or was it the other way around? Well, we'll move it again. Do you wish to move it, Councillor Patterson? Do you wish to second it? Thank you. So it's been moved and seconded. Is there any dissent? There's no dissent. That has been carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move on to 7.1, which is a Merrell minute on the Environmental Planning and Assessment Amendment for Infrastructure Contributions Bill 2021. This Merrell minute, it's about supporting Local Government New South Wales and to add our voice to the opposition to this bill. As outlined, the state government needs to not do this while there's so much of the local infrastructure reform agenda remains unknown. Whilst city-based councillors do expect to gain the greatest impact from this, make no mistake, we will have some impact, and even minor impact on our budget is huge, and that negativity of impact adds up. And we don't know what the ramifications are. We've seen in cost shifting like the waste levy, etc., how long term that does impact on us. So the recommendation follows the line of the Local Government New South Wales. I'm not going to read it all. There's a number of people we need to consider writing to and put our weight behind the Local Government New South Wales lobbying for this bill to be deferred at this point and our opposition to it.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Councillor.
On page 7 of your report, Chair, on the 4th paragraph, it mentions that the decision to reform the rate peg to cater for population growth to reductions in infrastructure contributions. Am I right to interpret that as if our rates rise by X, the state government's going to reduce infrastructure funding to us by X?
I'll actually get the General Manager to explain.
No, through you, Madam Mayor, no, it's not. It's actually more the other way around. What they're trying to do with the rates is acknowledge that areas that are seeing rapid growth, i.e. sections of Western Sydney and some of the coastal strips, that there are extra demands on that, so therefore their rate peg will take more of that into consideration. It is very, very technical. It's very difficult to explain.
So the infrastructure contributions, this bill that the state government wants to put forward, they want to reduce the infrastructure contributions they're giving us. Is that right?
They're wanting to reform them, and I think pretty well everyone would agree there's need for reform. However, the way this bill has been developed and introduced, there is a very strong feeling in the industry that it needs to be withdrawn and proper consultation undertaken with the industry on how to address these things. There's a long history to it. What used to be called Section 94 contributions and now Section 11 and 12. They are complicated, they are difficult to administer, and they do need to be simplified. This bill is an attempt to make some of those changes, but there's been inadequate consultation with the industry on it.
Well, the parliamentary inquiry says the bill should not go ahead. So
that's correct.
Yeah.
And we run the risk of being worse off.
Right. Okay. Not good.
Councillor Morris and then Councillor Horval. Councillor.
I'm just turning my microphone on, Madam Mayor. Just a small point. Can we just review the people that we are writing to include where they are entitled to the term the Honourable, that gets added? Because our state member is the Honourable Melinda Pavey. I'm not sure on the status of all of the others, but there may well be some the Honourables that are missing, and we should add those where appropriate.
That will be done when the letters are written. Thank you, Councillor. We'll note that. Councillor Horval.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. The question is basically in the report, it's going to affect councils across the state financially. Has there been any calculations of what impact on Kempsey Shire Council will there be if this proceeds without being withdrawn?
The director's not here. I do think he outlined last night. I'll take it, General Manager.
Yeah.
I think he indicated that at this point, from what he could understand, it would be minimal.
It is.
But even minimal for us is something.
It will be some cost, but we're not sure of the amount. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is there any dissent on the recommendation? The recommendation is carried. Thank you, councillors. We will now move on to item 9.1. There is a recommendation. It's
Move that way, Madam.
Thank you, councillor. Oh, okay. It's been seconded by Councillor McGinn and moved by Councillor McGinn and seconded by Councillor Patterson. Do you wish to speak, councillor?
Just briefly, Madam Mayor, I note that this is a request really to reduce the risk of, or essentially that the outcome of this is a plan B for us should our plan A not be accepted, being that we do believe that the airport land usage actually does accommodate the development application that is to be determined. So this is not actually a recommendation dealing with the delivery of the adventure park. It is actually to have a change in the Kempsey Local Environment Plan for the uses that we request for this development application. It's actually very exciting. I look forward to the development application continuing.
Oops. Thank you, Councillor McGinn. Councillor Horval.
Madam Mayor, could the General Manager or someone there explain the process of the development application going ahead based on being presented to the joint planning panel if that was to proceed, go to the joint planning panel, this will become redundant. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, that would be correct.
And what's the time frame there, Mr. General Manager, on going to the joint planning panel?
We aim to have the DA ready to submit this calendar year.
It won't come back to the, until the new council is.
Councillor Horval, your question has been answered.
Yes, but I'm saying in the time frame, it won't come back until.
Councillor Horval, your
Yeah.
question has.
Further question.
Yeah, the time frame will then be up to the JRPP to go through their assessment process. It's unlikely, well, no, it simply will not come back to this council.
Thank you very much. Another question too on page, if I may, Madam Mayor, page 11 at the bottom.
Yes, Councillor, could you please, if you want to ask questions, could you please indicate with your hand? I'll take your questions, then I'll go to Councillor Morris.
Sorry, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'll try and remember that. In the second last paragraph, it talks about, in the last sentence of the second last paragraph, it says, similarly, the associated development application is not being considered as part of this planning proposal, as it will be dealt with through a separate regulatory assessment process. Specifically, what is that process? Is that the JRPP?
Through me, yes, that's correct. It goes through the JRPP.
No, that's the separate one. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Morris.
Madam Mayor, just a couple of questions in relation to the planning proposal. On page 2, it says that the lots are accessed from the eastern side of the existing runway via River Street. There's probably 2 roads that you have to turn down from River Street to get there. Is that a reasonable assessment, or should there be an expansion? The one from the south is not Nelson's Wharf Road, which is right where it is, but there's Sherwood Road and then Old Airport Road after River Street to get to the site. I'm just curious as to why it just says it's accessed from River Street to the north. Hello?
We're just trying to find the actual page.
Page 2 of the planning proposal.
Yes, thank you, Councillor.
My understanding, the way it's been written by the planners, is that is seen as the primary route, and you would turn off River Street onto Sherwood, etc. It's just the terminology of it.
Yeah. The next question says part of the grass now disused second runway for the aerodrome. How long has it been disused? Has it been formally closed? Because I hear from the community that there is still some suggestion that it's needed, and I know several years ago when there was an attempt to close it, it was overturned. So is it definitely a disused second runway now, or is it still potentially a grass airstrip?
Through you, Madam Mayor, it is currently closed under a NOTAM, and the processes are in place to permanently close it.
So what are the processes to formally close it then?
There's been a decision by council to fence the runway, which requires the grass runway to be fenced over, therefore requiring it to be closed. Based on the decision of council, a safety case has been undertaken by an experienced aviation consultant. This matter has been referred to CASA. Comments have been received back from CASA. We're in the process of taking the final steps, which is undertaking additional discussions with the key stakeholders. They were engaged in the actual safety case. Following that, we will then need to, at the appropriate time, update the IRSA to have it as a permanently closed airstrip.
Can I just ask?
Just a moment, Councillor McGinn. I have Councillor Horval first, so just hold
Still
it.
have further. My hand's been put down. I still have further questions. I'll just put it back up.
Keep going, Councillor Morris.
I've still got a few questions to go. On page 15, it states that Kempsey Shire Council advised that there is suitable capacity in the water and sewer systems for the area to cater for the requirements of the site. What sewer capacity is there in that area?
Yeah, the sewer capacity is the old line from the jail that council now has ownership of. and there'll be a rising main from the facility across to that line.
Will any other properties in the area be connected into that, or will it be purely for the use of the adventure centre?
That isn't relevant to this report. I know Water and Sewer are actually undertaking a plan for how they might use that sewer line to connect other properties into that line in the future.
Okay. From what you said, Mr. Roman, what you said before, this whole proposal may be redundant, but on page 17 it says that the public exhibition period will be for a minimum of 28 days, over the December-January period. I would like to ask that be either extended to a minimum of 42 days. I know a minimum of 28, it could be longer than that, or be a minimum of 28 days, excluding the period Friday the 17th of December to Monday the 10th of January, which is when council is closed down and a lot of the community will be involved in other activities. I believe that given the timing of the intended public exhibition of the planning proposal, 28 days is too short a period.
Through you, Mayor, I take that as your view, Councillor Morris. The program is being worked out, working backwards from the date the funding is required to be expended. Should we require to fall back onto the planning proposal, the time frame is important.
So can the intention of it at least be advertised earlier so those that are concerned will have a heads up?
Through Madam Mayor, we will continue the process with this project.
Yep. On page 18, goal 2, direction 8, promote the growth of tourism. Whilst this action refers to an area within Mid-Coast Council LGA, it is not relevant. So what's the relevance of Mid-Coast Council got to do with this proposal?
Councillor Morris, you're in the report or in the attachments?
In the attachment, in the actual planning proposal, which I assume is going to be used as to be put on public exhibition.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's page 18 there. Oh, good. Sometimes I don't see
On where you're referring to, Councillor
Page
Morris?
18, goal 2, direction 8.
Area within.
In the table.
What's this?
What page?
Refers to an area within MCC LGA. Is not relevant to the matter. I believe that may be a typo by the external planning. Sorry. All right.
the table refers to the goals out of the North Coast one.
Yeah.
I assume in the North Coast that refers to.
I believe that may be a typo there, Councillor Morris. I'll have to get back to you on that.
So that'll be corrected if it is a typo?
Can you
Mr.
just
Farragut's just having a bit of a look at the background to it.
Mr. Farragut's just having a look.
Take his next question.
I'll just take your next question while we come back to that. Your next question?
Direction 10 is to facilitate air, rail and public transport infrastructure. Whilst this action refers to an area within Kempsey, it is not relevant to the planning proposal area. So what it's saying then is that because the airstrip has been formally closed separately, it doesn't affect air transport. Is that what the assessment is there? Because surely the
saying here is that it's actually about public transport. This proposal has nothing to do with public
transport. It has nothing to do with public transport because there's no RP2. That's the end of my questions, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Horval. Before you start, Councillor, we do have a bit of commentary around Councillor Morris's second last question.
Yeah, I think it's a typo. Yeah, we will come back to you on that other point, Councillor Morris.
Yeah. Okay, Councillor Horval.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to refer to page 12 of the report, and it talks about stakeholder engagement. And it says stakeholder engagement will be undertaken as required. Referring to the engagement plan of Kempsey Council, Community Engagement Strategies from 2019, it clearly says engage before decision making. I'm wondering why we are the proponents of this development application, but KSC strongly recommends where a major development is proposed, the developer, us, engage with members of the community who are affected by the proposed major development before an application for planning approval is made. This is a planning proposal. We haven't engaged with the people on the community on this, as far as I know. Why was that not done?
Point of order, Madam Mayor. It's just
Just a moment. The General Manager, do you want to, the General Manager would like to respond, but yes, I think your point of order is?
Yeah, that this is not a planning proposal.
Yes, it is.
No, based on what Councillor Orville was questioning.
I'm not going to uphold it. I'll let the General Manager respond.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the project has been public for 2.5 years. It's been included as part of the Tourism and Economic Development Tourism Plan, where a consultation was undertaken. There's been a whole range of other areas where it's been involved in discussions in the community. It's included in the DPOP. There was a further consultation undertaken. I'm more than comfortable that the public is aware of this, and any stakeholders are also aware of the project. The planning proposal also includes consultation in its legislative processes, so Council has met all of its requirements.
Mr.
Yeah.
May I finish?
Yes.
So before we proceed to the Joint Regional Planning Panel, will there be consultation with the public about this proposal?
Through Madam Mayor, no. Council has already undertaken, as I've just outlined, a range of consultation in relation to this proposal. Council has made a decision to proceed with this project. Council has accepted funding from the state and federal government to construct this project. Council has appointed project managers to actually undertake this project. Council has appointed the design consultants to actually do the final detailed design in preparation to go to tender for this project. That's the status of the project. Staff are acting on that, which would see us now, should Council adopt this, work on the planning proposal and concurrently look at submitting a DA for the facility.
Thank you, General Manager.
Madam Mayor, can I just clarify? My comment was about that this is not a planning proposal that goes out in public exhibition as it already has. We are seeking a Minister for Gateway requesting a determination for the Gateway.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay. I have no lights on. Is there any dissent on the recommendation?
Madam Mayor, may I speak against it, please?
Yeah, well, you may speak against it because Councillor McGinn has spoken. You may, yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I don't think we should be sending this through as a gateway submission. We should be going with the Joint Regional Planning Panel process and not have this as a backup. I'm quite really careful here because I did not know that the fence was going to be that close to the runway. I did not know that the Adventure Park buildings would be moved from where councillors were told it would be to within 75 metres of the main runway. The original plan was to have it at the corner on Aerodrome Road with a roundabout there. That was the concept plan presented to us. And now we have this closure of a runway, and the first I heard of it was on the 29th of September. So as a councillor representing the community, I was a bit surprised, well, really surprised that these plans had been drawn up and councillors and the community weren't consulted. So, as far as I'm thinking, and the community engagement strategy, we should have been consulting the community about these plans, and that's why I'll be voting against it, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Morris, do you have a question or a...
question, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councillor.
The question is to the General Manager. How is this a backup plan? What happens if the Joint Regional Planning Panel rejects it, or is this only a backup plan in the event that they reject it on the basis that it doesn't meet the planning proposals in accordance with the LEP, in which case this will be presented to the JRPP to supplement the DA that's originally placed before them?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. We're actually undertaking two concurrent processes. So there'll be a DA submitted based on the understanding of the infrastructure SEP allows indoor recreation with consent if it's deemed to be ancillary to the activities of the air transport facility. And I should say that the only point of being questioned in relation to permissibility of the land use is just simply around the indoor recreation aspects of this facility, not any other aspects. There's clear precedent and interpretation that the infrastructure SEP permits a facility such as this, which will take about 1,000 square metres in a 140 plus hectare site, as being ancillary to or subservient to the dominant use, which is the entire airport facility, as that is ancillary to it. That's the direction we'll go with the DA. Having spoken with the chair of the Joint Regional Planning Panel, they have suggested that we ensure we have the appropriate legal advice setting out that argument and that understanding of the particular clause in the legislation. So that will be submitted as one stream. Should that go through, there's no issues. It just is accepted as part of the DA and it is dealt with. Should that argument not be accepted, the planning proposal is then put up to seek to change a line in the Schedule 1 of our current LEP to permit indoor recreation uses on the airport land. That is what this second stream is about. Should that then be dealt with, a subsequent DA would then be submitted based on that.
Back to the JRPP again?
But it always goes through the JRPP because of the
size of the project.
The costs that, yeah, because it's over $5 million, it always goes through the JRPP.
Thank you, General Manager. Have you any further further response?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, if I can just respond to Councillor Horville's comments just to clarify a couple of things. In relation to the grass runway, the impetus for closing the grass runway was actually the fence. The fence was something that Council made a resolution about probably more than 18 months ago to actually proceed with that, and we sought grant funding, etc. The Adventure Park moving the building has been presented to Council at a briefing before. Councillor Horville may have been absent, I can't recall, but it certainly has, and it's been moved for a number of reasons, and one of those is to maximise the benefits of the closed grass runway and the access that provides to the main runway. It also allows us to move it up out of the flooding area more than where it was originally located once we had additional information in relation to the flood areas on there. The plan that has been presented has always been a concept plan. Concept plans quite regularly change. So what has gone through has been quite a normal process. Nothing unusual about it. It's something I've seen happen in councils dozens and dozens and dozens of times.
Madam Mayor, could I...
Thank you, General Manager. Do you have a question? You've spoken against, so do you have a question?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to clarify my position, if I may. I've been misrepresented, in my opinion.
You can clarify your position.
Madam Mayor, the General Manager said we voted in favour of the fence, and yes, I did. But at no time did I know that the fence would be...
No, I don't believe...
Across the grass runway, and that wasn't presented to us, Madam Mayor.
Point of...
Through you, Madam Mayor, I made no reference to how any councillor voted whatsoever in what I said.
Thank you,
None.
councillor. Okay, we have a recommendation. We have a recommendation in front of us, and I have no lights on. Is there any dissent on the recommendation? Thank you. There is 2 dissent. I'll wait till it comes up on the board before we move on to the next item. Thank you. The voting is on the board. We're moving on to item 9.2, which I note that Councillor Baxter is leaving the room.
Madam Mayor?
Thank you, Councillor Baxter.
Madam
Yes.
Mayor, has Director Fish returned?
No.
Okay. Thank you. I can see.
One of the councillors that Director Fish is actually our local emergency management officer, and that's the Limo. He's actually at the Emergency Operations Centre today.
Thank you.
Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Oh, thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have a quorum. Do I have a seconder, Councillor Saul? Oh, no, Councillor McGinn did so before you, because you were being very generous and offering their cop lolly. Yeah.
Madam Mayor, I have a question, if I may.
Yes, Councillor. Thanks. These are much better than the ones I.
Madam Mayor, from the conditions that have been attached to this report, it says this consent does not permit commencement of any site works. Works will not commence until such time as a construction certificate has been obtained and the appointment of a principal certifier. Have any of those happened? Can Councillor Baxter, as a member of council, get the kind of nod and say, I can go ahead with this beforehand?
Can I, through you, Madam Mayor, the question to that is absolutely no. The DA is before council to be determined. I'm not aware that Councillor Baxter has taken any action in relation to getting those sorts of things, and there's certainly been no indication from staff that anyone could proceed on any DA until they actually meet the conditions of consent.
Yep. Mr. General Manager, this assessment was done by an independent assessor because of Councillor Baxter being a member of council. Would they have reported to you that they've been to the site and inspected it, or is it all done on desktop?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm not familiar with the specific details of this. We appoint professional external planning consultants to undertake work when there could be a perceived conflict of interest to ensure that is covered and council is protected. The report before you is from that experienced, qualified and very capable planning consultant.
Councillor Horval, can I ask you a question, please? Where are you going with this line of questioning?
Well, Madam Mayor, I'm going with we should defer this until a compliance officer has visited the site, Madam Mayor.
Madam Mayor, point of order, he's implying that there's something untoward with this action to put this DA through council.
I won't uphold your point of order, but this is common practice. If you or I or anybody that was a member of the councillors or of the staff have a DA in, this is exactly what happens.
Madam Mayor, can I just make a comment that should this not have been Councillor Baxter, this would have been determined by staff and wouldn't be in front of council at all. And if Councillor Horval, from the interpretation of what I'm saying, appears to have some concern that there's some non-compliance with this, if he has evidence of that, please present it in the appropriate manner, not in the open forum of council.
Well, Madam, Mr. General Manager, I would like
Councillor
to...
Horval, you haven't been asked to speak.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I want to ask the question, General Manager.
Thank you. You may ask the question.
Mr. General Manager, I've just sent you an email with 2 photographs. If you could address that email, and then I would like you to support the deferral of this application or this motion.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the matter before council is a DA and the information is before council. There is no other information to be considered in this matter. Should Councillor Horville have a concern about non-compliance, there are appropriate methods to actually raise that. It is not in a council meeting.
Thank you, General Manager.
Well, Mr. General Manager, if I may.
Thank you, Councillor Horville.
May I speak, Madam Mayor?
No, I'm sorry, Councillor, you have already come so close to a code of conduct. If there's something that you think is inappropriate, there are channels to do that. You can ask a question on the recommendation of consent. That's it.
Right. My question is, if construction has already started on the house, Madam Mayor, will it be infracting the conditions of consent?
Through you, Madam Mayor, something that happens reasonably regularly across people, every council in the country, is that at times people commence work prior to a DA being provided. It's not uncommon, and this isn't making a comment about this specific development application, it's just a general comment. The key thing is that DA consent should be given. People should comply with that. If there's not compliant, action will be taken.
Thank you, Councillor. We have a recommendation. Is there any dissent?
Madam Mayor.
Whoops. Is there any dissent on the recommendation?
I speak against it, if I may, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, may I speak against
Yes.
Madam Mayor, I drove out to that lot 26.
Sorry, Councillor.
And
Sorry, you're alleging misconduct. I will not accept that.
I'm not alleging misconduct. I'm just saying what I saw.
Sorry, that's it.
Our house has been
Sorry,
constructed.
Councillor Horville, that is it.
Our house has been constructed in the
Councillor Horville, you are alleging
protection area.
misconduct. Sorry. I'm sorry, but you cannot do that in a council meeting.
He's got it on record now, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Is there any dissent on the
Madam
recommendation?
Mayor, I move.
Councillor Horville,
I move an
if you continue to allege misconduct, I will just.
He's speaking over you. You're in the process of putting that.
You have spoken over me. You have alleged misconduct. You have been disruptive to this council meeting. I think you have spoken enough.
Madam Mayor, could I have got the point of order? Can I ask through you to the General Manager, are we as the current councillors sitting here today able to restrict Councillor Horville from this meeting from his accusations and his defamation on our fellow councillor?
Through you, Madam Mayor, in response to that, in terms of the code of meeting practice, there's a process that would be followed, which would actually need a motion from the councillors, giving the reasons for the ejection of any councillor from the council meeting. And then that would have to be then dealt with. Where we are currently at the moment, the Mayor is halfway through putting this motion to the floor, and she should be permitted to actually finish putting that motion to the floor for voting.
Thank you, councillors. I'm going to continue to put this motion to the floor. Is there any dissent on this motion? Thank you, councillors. That motion has been carried. We are now moving to morning tea. We will be back in chambers at 11:15. you.
And we are live.
Thank you. So yes, Councillor Horwell, I believe you would like to make an apology.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to apologise to you as chair of the meeting. I did not realise I was speaking over the top of you, and I apologise for doing so. I should not have done that.
Thank you, Councillor Horwell. 9.3, councillors.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to...
Just 9.3, Councillor. Yes, Councillor.
Madam Mayor, I'd just like to request a procedural motion in relation to Councillor Horwell's allegations of untoward doings of council. He's accusing, previously has been accusing council of acting untoward, and I really take an offence to that, Madam Mayor, and I would like to ask my fellow councillors if they have any wish to eject Councillor Horwell from this meeting.
So that's your procedural motion.
Procedural motion, Madam Mayor.
Do I have a seconder for that procedural motion? Thank you, Councillor. That has been lost, so we will continue as we are, and he did apologise, so thank you, Councillor. On the basis that he had spoken over the top of the Mayor, that was the apology. We'll now go on to 9.3, which is 2021-2022 Community Grants Recommendations. There is a recommendation. Do I have a mover? Yes, Councillor Horwell?
I'll move it, Madam Mayor, thank you.
Do I have a seconder? I'll second that. Thank you, Councillor McGinn. Was this one with withdrawal? No. This is just here. Do you want to speak to it, Councillor Horwell?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you very much. Council is really involved with the community, and it's fulfilling our role in the community and looking after people who need to take active roles in promoting the well-being of our community. And we're handed out with these grants $72,527, which is going to help organisations throughout Kempsey Shire, and that's a fantastic thing for council to do. And I look forward to people in the community submitting more applications to enhance our community in the second round, because we do have some money left, and I'm sure council will promote that in the future. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Horwell. Before I put this, I'd just like to congratulate the project participants and the awardees, and thank the staff, because this is we're now in our second round of doing this way, and I think that now that we have far more oversight, and the standard of the applications has come through in this report. So a big thank you to the community and a big thank you to the staff, because it was through them that now we have more way of giving out more grant funding, and the project of the grant reconstruction, I guess, has been a real success. So is there any dissent? Oh, Councillor Morris wants to ask a question or speak against or move an amendment. Thank you, Councillor Morris.
Just a couple of questions, Madam Mayor. Why haven't we been given the opportunity to view the applications as an attachment, which has happened previously, even if they were placed in a confidential attachment?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we've seen this purely as councillors adopted the process for this. Staff have undertaken that process and presented the results to council of that process. Councillors wish to see the actual applications, that could be arranged.
Have long-standing grants that were mentioned earlier on that aren't mentioned in the report today, have they been continued, i.e. to the schools, to the Country Education Foundation, MACLEAY Valley, to the Christmas markets at Riverside Park? Are they still standing donations, or have they not been included?
Yes.
So they have been included, and what are the quantums of
Yes.
those?
My understanding is it's the same. I know that the schools ones have already been allocated out to the school.
So all of those organisations had exactly the same amount allocated, correct?
Correct.
And given the undersubscription of the grants, will that undersubscription be carried forward to boost next year's grants, or next year's grants be at the same level of funding?
Mr. Mitchell?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Morris, we have approximately $50,000 that was set aside for the community grants program that hasn't been allocated as part of this round. The intention is that we would do a second round in February, and for that round to open in February, and obviously a paper would then come back to the next term of council at the conclusion of that second round. So there'd be obviously the normal sort of engagement and promotion. The work that's been done by our community development team has established really good relationships within the community and a good understanding of this process. So we'd be expecting that that second round would be successful as well.
Okay. Thank you. There's some more questions, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter.
Just one anecdotal story, Chair, to highlight the benefits of these grants. You see the first grant there to the big knobby bush care group at Crescent Head. I found out recently that that dedicated group who are eradicating weeds on that headland, it seems that headland is one of 3 headlands in the whole of New South Wales that has this indigenous ground cover, flowering ground cover. And so they're up there trying to save this ground cover, this native ground cover, one of only 3 places in the whole of New South Wales. So it's a great thing they're doing, and it's good that we're supporting them with these grants. Thank you.
Thank you. That was, we did indulge you because we already had a speaker for, but thank you for that insightful information, Councillor Baxter. Is there any dissent on the recommendation? There's no dissent. That's been carried unanimously. 9.4, which is the reconciliation.
I'd like to move that way, Madam Mayor.
Plan. Thank you. Moved by Councillor McGinn and seconded by Councillor Baxter. It was being withdrawn, so...
Can I really briefly speak on it?
Yes, you may speak.
I do realise it was one of the, originally one of the recommendations that was in the block to be passed by council, but I'm really glad that someone sought to pull it out. This reconciliation action plan, and we have the draft attached here, is to be placed on public exhibition for 3 months, which firstly I think that's a great idea given that we've got the Christmas break, so people can have a look at it. But it is largely an internal document for our employees to increase their knowledge and awareness of reconciliation. I would just like to put on the record, it's a visually impressive document. It's a lovely document to have a look at, and that makes it very inviting to dive into and read the content. So I'd just like to congratulate the staff that have prepared this document. It's not only information-wise and a good read and informative, but it is actually a very attractive document. So I congratulate those involved in the project.
Thank you, Councillor McGinn. Councillor Horville.
Some questions, Madam Mayor, if I may.
Yes, Councillor.
Madam Mayor, you were the one withdrawing it, so thank you for doing that.
No, I didn't withdraw this one. I withdrew the classification of roads.
Oh, I thought that was... Okay, well, I also wanted to withdraw it, so one of us did. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Quick question to the General Manager. How often does this committee meet?
Through Madam Mayor, we've been meeting reasonably regularly, and it's just as required. It's actually an internal group that have actually been meeting, but it is when required.
Righto, thank you. And of the 17 members, how many are Aboriginal, please?
Relevance?
I would have to find that out, but that's also very difficult to answer because a number of people who may have Aboriginal heritage don't necessarily identify as Aboriginal either.
Yeah, okay, thank you. We don't want to appear paternalistic on having a committee with no Aboriginal representatives. Madam, Mr. General Manager, if I may.
Councillor Horval, your question had been answered.
Can I just clarify that the invitation was put out to all Indigenous staff that we were aware of to participate in this?
I thank you. It needs to be inclusive, and I thank you for that.
Councillor Horval, your question has been answered. Councillor Horval, when you receive an answer, you do not need to come back. So,
sorry, Madam Mayor, I was thanking the General Manager.
Speaking over someone.
I understand that we're running close to the wind here. Yes, Councillor Horval, do you have another question?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Has the General Manager or the committee considered having any external people on this committee, like councillors or members of the Aboriginal community, like Uncle Bob Smith?
Through you, Madam Mayor, as can be seen from the document, there has been quite extensive discussions going on internally and externally. It is an internal document, this. It is for Council's use, and it's about Council's actions in relation to reconciliation. Outside of this, Council continues to actively engage with the local Indigenous community across a whole range of fronts on all sorts of topics. All of that helps inform our general actions. One of the things I can say about this council is that, and its staff in particular, is that they are very committed to being inclusive. They're very committed to acknowledging the past and recognising there are very positive steps and ways forward for us as an organisation. The external engagement helps us to inform and define what we do internally. The plan has also been endorsed by Reconciliation Australia, which is the national body responsible for approving these plans. So the plan itself, where it's at the moment, is, I think, a very, very positive step for this community and a positive reflection not only on the staff who have been working on this, but also on the ongoing development of the relationship between Council and our Indigenous community and the broader community.
I'm a bit confused by your line of questioning, Councillor Horval, because I'm reading on page 20 that Uncle Bob Smith provided the welcome to country in the document and has been in part of the conversation. Anyway, Councillor Patterson, I'll take your question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I previously had a few questions about this. In the Reconciliation Action Plan, as a member of Council, part of Council, is part of our Council's reconciliation actually looking to help the Indigenous community with maintenance and care of their land holdings, their buildings, their houses, etc. As a business person as well, I see that that they have a few different parts. It may be with the Lands Council that's been doing a few areas of helping to clean up different parts of the Indigenous community, as in helping them maintain their houses and stuff. I do believe myself that would help them feel more inclusive of our society if they have actually a clean area around them, or if our council as well has Indigenous groups that work together with council employees that on maintenance, because as council is the number one maintenance person organisation in the area. Have you any comment on that, General Manager?
Through Madam Mayor, we have on several occasions since I've been here assisted in the clean-up and around a couple of the areas in our community, with working very closely with the Aboriginal Land Council and other Aboriginal groups as well. We've also recently been having meetings with Aboriginal community housing and the work they're actually doing. I think it's fair to say that those groups are making every effort that they can in the work that they do. We will continue to partner with them wherever we possibly can and provide the resources. We assisted down at COUNCILLOR Boys Home on one occasion with the clean-up down there as well. So yeah, where we can, we will continue to partner with them on those areas.
Thank you. That's great.
May I ask a quick question?
Is that all your questions? I'll take Councillor Saul first, then I'll take Councillor McGinn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, it's just on the report itself. What would the estimated cost be for such a plan? Do we have an idea what the main costings will be, please?
Through you, Madam Mayor, a lot of the costings are actually just involved in our staff time, which we've actually already allocated for. It's part of their role. Part of, I guess, what we're trying to do here is ensure that some things we're already doing and some things we need to do are embedded in as part of the culture that we operate as an organisation in terms of the relationships we actually build and maintain. So there's not a lot of direct cost involved in actually doing this. Some of the things you'll see already is as you enter the entry foyer downstairs, you'll see the Aboriginal welcome there. We've done that. We needed to put a screen on there anyway, so there was no additional cost. It was just we just used Aboriginal artwork for it. The banners at South Kempsey at the Middleton Street roundabout, for example, we have to put banners there anyway. So it's using the appropriate things there. So a lot of these actions can be done without huge costs. It's just how we incorporate it. There's work being done on the library right behind this wall where I'm sitting at the moment. And some of the footpaths and that will have some Aboriginal motif stencils put into them. Again, they're things we've got to do. It doesn't cost us anything extra at all. So a lot of it's actually done that's actually included. The artwork on our website, for example, is another good example of that. We need artwork. We can use Aboriginal artwork from local people. And it's just part of what we do.
Councillor McGinn.
Oh, thanks, Madam Mayor. Look, I've already spoken as to how much I think of the document, which I think is excellent. I'm a great one in private enterprise for suggesting that we actually need SMART goals in our measurements, and that they should often be reflected in numbers, dollars, percentages, what have you. I guess my question to you is, do we have a goal? One I'm actually thinking of is a target percentage of Aboriginal employees as a percentage of total workforce that reflects our community's percentages?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we're developing a diversity plan in our organisational development area, in our human resource area at the moment. So that would be part of our employment strategy. So we haven't set a figure yet. I've got a personal desire that it should be something equivalent to our local population, and we've certainly seen a large increase in Aboriginal employment in the organisation over the last 3 years. So our what's the word I'm trying to say? The goal we would like to see is that sort of level. We've got a long way to go to that, but it certainly has increased. And as I pointed out in response to one of Councillor Horville's questions, it is also very hard to gauge that because there are a number of Aboriginal people who I know who will not identify as Aboriginal either.
Councillor Horville. Councillor Horville, you're on mute.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Question to the General Manager, if I may, Madam Mayor. This very positive document that's been produced, could it be forwarded to other large employee organisations in the Shire, like MACLEAY and Vancouver, for them to consider adopting a similar one for their organisations? I only named two, but there might be other organisations, and it's such a positive document that it would enhance reconciliation throughout the Shire, not just with council staff.
Through Madam Mayor, the document's going to be placed on public exhibition for 3 months, and I'm pretty sure those sort of employers will see that through that process as well.
Thank you very much.
Is there any dissent on the recommendation? I'm going to put it down. There's no dissent. It's been carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We're going down on to now 9.5, which is the Voluntary Housing Raising Scheme Guideline update. Yes, Councillor Morris, are you asking a question or moving it or?
Move that.
Just a moment. Yes, Councillor Morris, what was that?
Wanted to move it
Thank you. I'll
With a
ask
small
for a seconder.
with a small change.
Your small change before we get it seconded, yes.
And with the small change being in para 1, note the increase in cost over the last 14 years to raise a property and remove the current cap on the reimbursement amount.
You accept that? Do I have a seconder?
Madam Mayor, can I have advice on that before I second that, please?
Yeah. Thank you. So it's been seconded by Councillor Saul. Do you wish to speak on it? Councillor Horval had his hand up for some reason.
I was going to second it, Madam Mayor. Sorry.
Okay, it's fine. Councillor Morris, do you wish to speak?
I obviously support council's been doing this for a number of years, and it's important that we help community members through money from the state government raise their houses to protect them from potential flood, rather than just noting that there's been an increase and stating in the report that the cap that was put on some 14 years ago restricts the maximum amount of reimbursement that the community member can receive or property owner can receive from the state government, with them making a contribution for the remainder. I believe that we should remove that cap because there's no actual financial impost on council from my reading of the report. It just restricts the amount that the person can get from, or the property owner can get from the state government. It would, of course, reduce the number of houses that could be raised in any 1 year. But I'm fairly certain that we don't use the full amount in any 1 year anyway, and that would be subject to application to the state government. So I strongly support with the change to point 1.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Horval,
Madam Mayor, may I ask a question, please?
your question is?
On page 22, and the bottom of page 22, on the top of page 23, it says there was a Wed McEwen flood damage assessment report provided a ranking of properties in the lower MACLEAY Valley depending on the likely frequency or depth of flooding and the velocity of flows. It found that a total of 244 homes would be inundated in a 100-year flood event, and 183 of these could be raised above the flood height. So my question is, we've managed to do at least 5. How are we promoting raising the other 183 houses? What positive action can we do to get more people on board with this?
Through you, Madam Mayor, my understanding is we actually advertise this scheme each year to those properties. There are limitations on some of these people. Obviously, they have to be able to afford that investment themselves, and many of those properties can't. There's also limitations on the amount that can actually be funded through the program each year. So it is small steps. We are talking about private property, and council has a role in assisting this process, but its role is quite limited in this process.
So, Mr. General
Thank
Manager,
you, Councillor. Your question has been answered.
I have another one, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, General Manager, if I may, you said that you sometimes. What's the process of contacting these 183 or thereabouts properties? You say it's a regular thing? Is it in their rate notice, or what happens, please?
I'd have to take that on notice. I don't have that detail here, and there's Mr. Fisher's at the Emergency Operations Centre who'd probably be able to answer that.
Okay, thank you. Madam Wemark, speak in favour of it, please.
The mover has spoken. So we haven't had anyone speaking against?
Just a quick.
No, I'm sorry.
Madam Mayor, I want to speak in favour of what Councillor Shields said.
No, I'm sorry. We've had the mover speak. There's no speakers against.
Well, I'll speak against it, Madam Mayor.
Certainly you can speak against it.
Right, just a small issue, Madam Mayor. I'm sure we'll get it very quickly. Madam Mayor, Councillor Shields at the briefing last night said...
You could have asked this as a question if you wanted the information, but if you want to speak against it and vote against it, by all means.
Well, I'm speaking against it, but I'm sure you could persuade me not to. But, Madam Mayor, the issue that Councillor Shields raised at the briefing last night was the very hard task of finding people to raise houses. And I would like to see somehow that council can source some of those builders that would be prepared to do it and tell people about them. But yes, I think what Councillor Shields said, it's a great program, but we need to overcome that difficulty.
Is there any dissent on the... I've got no lights on, so there's no more speakers. Paul, is there any dissent on the recommendation? There's no dissent. Thank you, councillors. I will actually accept, I can't do it now, but if that happens again, I will be raising a point of order of any councillor that wishes to speak against a item and then promptly decides that they were going to vote for it purely so they could speak. That's not good practice. Okay, we'll move right along on to 9.7, which is the local event public holiday. There is a recommendation. Do I have a mover?
I was just drawing it, Madam Mayor.
And these hands did go up in unison, so I will take, are you moving it, Councillor Horval, or are you asking a question? And then Councillor Morris. So
I'm amending it, Madam Mayor.
So you're moving it with an amendment, which is...
Yes, Madam Mayor. Could I draw the attention of councillors to the conclusion at the bottom of page 29, and the conclusion is confusing. The second paragraph reads, the request for a part-day public holiday for the Kempsey show is not recommended. The paragraph then goes on to explain why it's not recommended. And then at the bottom it says, consequently, it is recommended that Council resolve to submit the application to the Minister requesting declaration of a local event days for both the Kempsey Cup and Kempsey Show in 2022. So I'm going with the original top recommendation that the Kempsey Show not be declared a half day and remove that from number 1 and just leave 2 as the application. So maybe council is going to understand the conflict there, but I'm confused a little bit, and I'm wondering whether we can have an explanation of that, Madam Mayor.
Madam Mayor, I may be able to clarify that. In the legislation, there's a clear distinction between a public event day and a public holiday. So the Kempsey show asked that there be a public holiday, which is totally different. So public holidays sees all the shops and everything closed, schools closed, everything. What we are saying is we do not recommend it be a public holiday. We are recommending it be a public event day. That's why both of them, this is what we've done every year. It's been a public event day for both.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Well, thank you for the clarification. I will move the motion as written there in the recommendation. I was just a bit confused about the not recommending and the recommending. Thank you.
Thank you.
The original recommendation.
You had your hand up. Was that to second it or to ask a question?
Who was that?
You had your hand up.
I put my hand up very early on to move it.
Oh, okay. So we'll take you as the seconder. Thank you, councillor. There's no lights on. Is there any dissent? No dissent. That's been carried. We'll move on to 9.8, which actually Councillor Morris brought this out. I don't know whether, but Councillor McGinn's already moved it. So Councillor Morris, before I ask for a second, I'll just ask Councillor Morris out of courtesy to see
I was intending to move an amendment, which I probably don't need to move. It can probably just be covered with a question. And that question was going to be, over the last couple of years, I can remember there's been events like water breakdowns and so forth. And whilst they've been attended to get them initially reported was very difficult because there was nobody working that could be contacted except for the after hours contact number, and they were not very helpful. Hopefully that's been improved. But what I was going to ask is, could council ensure that a suitable skeleton staff be maintained and enhanced as needed to satisfy community demands during the office close down period?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we have a range of staff that are actually placed on call. Additional staff are placed on call over this period of time. There was an instance 3 years ago that caused us some concern during this period of time, but that certainly has been rectified since then.
Yeah. There's also the ranger responsibilities. I assume there'll be there'll be no drop-off in the ranger and enforcement requirements for that sort of thing.
Yeah, what I should add is, well, we're saying this is a close down. Council is a 24/7 business. Our sewer and water operations, all those sorts of things operate 24/7. Our waste stations are operating through that. There's only a couple of days they close. Our rangers are operating during that period as well. So it's really, this is just our offices that are actually really being closed. A lot of those other, or all those other services we just mentioned will continue 24/7 as required. Obviously for the water and sewer, and then the relevant shifts and opening hours for our waste stations and our rangers.
Okay, so Councillor McGinn, your light's on. You seconded it.
Yes, I want to speak in favour of it.
Okay. The mover. Do we have a mover? Can I just Manager? Councillor Morris, will you going to move this now as is? Because Councillor, you withdrew it, so the Councillor McGinn moved it. But then I said I'd defer to you to see what you were going to do with it.
Well, I assume that Councillor McGinn moved it. You know, she
so
took it away before you gave her the okay, as she always does. So
you're happy?
He can move it.
Are you happy to second it, Councillor? Councillor Morris, are you happy to?
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor McGinn, would you like to speak?
I just wanted to say, Madam Mayor, that in the year that we've had, which not only business as usual, but in addition we've had, you know, the ongoing effects of drought and bushfire from the previous year. We've had a flood, we've had COVID. The staff have worked incredibly hard, long hours. Our dedicated staff deserve a decent break over Christmas. And I know this has been traditional over the last few years that we do shut the council offices, libraries and depot, but I certainly think that it would be irresponsible not to go ahead with this recommendation given the workload and people just simply need a break.
Thank you. I'm putting it. Any dissent? There's no dissent. It's been carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. 9.9, delegation of authority to the General Manager. Yes, Councillor Morris?
I move that with a second point, and that second point is that this matter be brought back to council for consideration no later than March 2022. I know it is traditional that this comes up this time in the year, but we are 2 meetings prior to an election, or the second last meeting prior to an election. So I feel that it's appropriate that it comes back. And I say March so that the new councillors, if there are, or whoever are the councillors, have the opportunity to vote on and endorse and agree to those delegations. And then you could go back to the normal cycle. But I believe it's important that it comes to the new council for consideration.
Madam Mayor, I was going to move an perhaps amendment or a foreshadow that we actually go with the original recommendation.
I need a seconder for Councillor Morris's.
I'll second it, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm just going to. Yes, I'm just going to get some advice. Being a new council, they probably aren't aware what the delegations are. So,
And it puts it in front of them and makes them read it.
yeah, yes.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Look, I don't foresee there's any issues with this coming back to March, and to be honest, I couldn't say it's something that we wouldn't have done anyway. The General Manager's delegation of authority is a topic that we have on the agenda for the councillor induction that we've already planned. So, yeah, I don't see any issue with us revising it earlier.
Madam Mayor, I'll withdraw my amendment then.
Thank you, Councillor. So we have, I'll just wait to see it go up on the board. And while we're doing that, the seconder was Councillor Horville. I think with the new council sitting in chambers, reading the delegation in March when they've two meetings in or one meeting in would probably be very useful, I would think. Yes, a good training part, which will then put in play what they're learning in the inductions. Any dissent on the recommendation? There's no dissent. That has been carried. We now go to 9.14. I wish to add an amendment to 9.14, which is why I withdrew it. So I will just add this for councillors to consider as the motion. Actually, I've sent it through, so I'll just wait for it to go up.
Madam Mayor, you're moving the motion as you've put, I have. Thank you.
Yes.
I'll place it on the screen for discussion and fix the formatting whilst councillors discuss.
So what I've added as point 6 is that Council acknowledges the work of the former Minister for Regional Roads and Transport, the Honourable Melinda Pavey, in instigating the New South Wales Roads Classification Review. And I'm trying to read my writing here. Review support in relation to the reclassification and transfer of the Kempsey Armadale Road from the local member for... Oh, no, that last part doesn't need to be there. Yep. And that Council acknowledged the initial work of the Mid-North Coast Joint Organisation and the collaboration between Kempsey Shire Council and the Armadale Regional Council staff in putting forward the reclassification proposal. I think it is important that we do acknowledge the work that has been undertaken at the planning level of this very important review and transfer that has now come to the fact that our Kempsey Armadale Road has already gone on to the priority round, and that will give us some saving already immediately. But it's important to understand that process. These conversations were very much underway when we were a ROC, actually, when it was mid-ROC. And the 6 councils started this conversation with the transfer over of the highway, and where it all led from there. I do think it's particularly important for the community also to notice that there is a strong relationship with Armadale Regional Council and the Kempsey Council in putting this application in. So that's what I propose that we consider as point 6 and point 7. Councillor Horville.
Councillor Morris.
I did actually need a seconder. Thank you, Councillor McGinn. Councillor Horville.
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think Councillor Morris had his hand up first, but I'd be happy to have me talk. I'll ask the questions. The original plan that the joint organisation, Armadale Regional Council and Kempsey Shire Council, was in their submission, was to have the Kempsey Armadale Road a state road, and the committee has come back and said it will be a regional road. Is there any way we can appeal the decision and ask for them to reconsider it to be a state road, or has that horse bolted?
Through you, Madam Mayor, there are no appeal processes.
Right, thank you. So the other question, what contact have we had with Armidale Regional Council on this result?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I understand Mr. Fish and his team, well before the announcement of this, we were working with them on this road and how it can actually be proposed and put forward. They jointly worked on that, and they would have been in touch since the information has been provided to us that it is to be reclassified.
And finally, Mr. General Manager, again with that, Director Fish here, you might be able to tell me, when will it officially become transferred into the state assets?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we're unsure of the exact timing of that. There's still a process to go through that the government will work through with all the councils involved in this priority round. But we're unsure as to when that final date will be, when it actually goes off our books and onto theirs.
Right, thank you.
Councillor Morris.
Madam Mayor, just on point 7, can we look at changing it slightly or massaging a little bit to make it clearer? Like the council acknowledges initial work of Mid-Coast Joint Region or Joint Organisation and the collaboration. Now, is that purely about Kempsey Road, or is that about all the roads listed above?
I take your point. Yes, you're right. With the Mid-North Coast Joint Organisation, that was about all the roads, and yes, you probably.
So we had the
yes.
council works of the joint organisation in relation to the road classification review and the collaboration between Kempsey Shire Council, Armidale Regional Council staff putting forward the reclassification proposal for Armidale Road, or for Kempsey Armidale Road, whatever it's called.
Totally agree. So we just need to change that wording a little slightly.
Yeah, we just need to flesh it out so it makes more sense.
Yep. I must say, I did have it as 3 points, I think, to start with, and then thought, oh no, that's all too hard.
Yeah.
That council acknowledged the initial work of the Mid-North the road classification review and the collaboration between Kempsey Shire Council and the Armidale Regional Council in putting forward. That look better?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Okay, I don't see any lights on. I think we've covered that, and we'll just look forward to the next round. Any dissent? There's no dissent. That has been carried unanimously.
I might just note that whilst Councillor Baxter is out of shot of the camera, he is in the room and did vote.
Thank you. We'll now move on to item number 10.1, which is the notice of motion. Councillor Horville. Councillor Horville, you have your microphone on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I keep doing it, I'm sorry. My recommendation to Council is that Council brings forward and finalise the master plan for Kempsey Airport before embarking on any changes. Now, I'm going to change that slightly. Instead of brings forward, I would change expedite. Change brings forward to expedite and finalise. It just, with the feedback from the General Manager, that would make it clearer. So expedite and finalise the master plan for Kempsey Airport before embarking on any changes on the airport structure, which include possible closure of runway 1634, fencing of the main runway, MACLEAY Valley Recreation Adventure Park. 2, Council obtained expert legal opinion on any conflicts between the plans of fencing the Adventure Park, closure of runway 1634, with the 1993 deed of gift of Kempsey Aerodrome to Kempsey Shire Council by the Commonwealth of Australia. 3, ensure that airside fencing includes the safer placement back from the runway at the airport or runways, and with any additional funding for completion being allocated in the 2022-2023 operating plan. 4, undertake fulsome consultation with all airport users on the MACLEAY Valley Recreation Adventure Park project prior to submitting any development application to the Joint Regional Planning Panel. 5, obtains written approval from CASA and Air Services Australia for the A, location of the adventure park within the aerodrome precinct. B, closure of runway 1634. C, proximity of fencing to runway 422. 6, receives a written report and recommendation to the February 2020 Council meeting on progress on the issues of master planning, consultations, written legal advice, possible closure of runway 1634, airside fencing, and location of the adventure park.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Morris. Thank you, Councillor Horville.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could I ask some questions before I speak to my motion, Madam Mayor, please?
Yes, Councillor.
In the comments, Mr. General Manager, you made on this, they're very extensive, and I thank you for them. You've written in the first paragraph there, Kempsey Airport is not a federally leased airport. And you go on to say that the master plan by the Federal Infrastructure Department does not apply. Why I put that in the report, Mr. General Manager, it is best practice. And I'm asking, should we be engaging in best practice to consult the community with the draft master plan?
Through you, Madam Mayor, when the master plan is drafted, we'll undertake the appropriate consultation at that time.
Okay, thank you. From the action register, Mr. General Manager, on the 25th of June 2019, the enabling advice reads 13 that in the interim that council informs the proponents of any development application within 5 kilometres of the airport that there is a potential noise impact that needs to be further investigated or considered. How many proponents, and that's us, have been informed of the increase in noise from this adventure park?
Through you, Mayor, there's no DA to actually undertake that step at this point in time, Councillor Horville.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. In the number 2, when I put forward obtains expert legal opinion, you or whoever wrote this report, I presume it's you, Mr. General Manager, my apology, you say there are no conflicts in relation to the areas and questions outlined in the detail of this notice of motion. Therefore, there is no need for expending ratepayers' funds on unnecessary legal advice. I presume you don't have any legal qualifications, Mr. General Manager, but were there any person with any legal qualifications who gave you that advice?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the consultation was undertaken with the relevant people to formulate that comment.
So we don't have legal advice on...
Councillor Horville, your question has been answered.
I understand that, Madam Mayor. I'm asking another question.
Your next question is?
As you got that advice, but it is not legal advice, would it be a possibility that legal advice might come up with a different outcome?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I did not make a comment whether we do or do not have legal advice. I said we have the appropriate advice.
Okay. Have you been forwarded the letter from Mr. Paul Stubbs, a solicitor, who asserts that there is a need for legal advice?
Yes, I have that, and I acknowledge that's his opinion.
It's a legal advice, yes.
Councillor
Horville, let's make it very
question
clear.
has been answered.
That is not
General
legal
Manager.
advice to council. That is a particular person who has a vested interest, a pecuniary interest, in the operation of the airport, and that is his opinion, not legal advice to council.
I know. So it's his final part of the letter, Mr. General Manager, writes, the closure of runway 34 may therefore not be authorised under the terms and conditions of the Kempsey Shire Council's tenure of Kempsey Airport. Isn't that a clear question that there might be a legal issue? Could there be a legal issue here, Mr. General Manager, that we should investigate?
That is an opinion of a person who has pecuniary interest in the matter.
Can I just ask a question beforehand? My understanding, General Manager, is that the letter that you're referring to is on Kempsey Flying Club Limited letterhead and signed not by a solicitor, but by the secretary of that club.
Correct, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Just so we're all clear on fact here. Yes, your continuing question line. Thank you, Councillor Horval.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to be clarified on the comments from General Manager, I'm quite happy to continue. Thank you. When I got to point 3 and ensure the airside fencing includes a safer placement back from the runway, you have written, Mr. General Manager, the fence has been located on the advice of a highly qualified and experienced aviation consultant. Who is this consultant and what qualifications did he have, please?
It's from the company called Aviation Projects, who have been used extensively here and at many, many other airports around the country. They are one of the top aviation consultants in the country. Feel free to question them at your will, Councillor Horval.
I will. Thank you, Mr. General Manager. I'm saying, well, they've got those qualifications on how far back the fence has to be. Well, that probably is accurate, but I'm just asking.
Councillor Horval, your question has been answered. Your next question, please.
Yes, I was asking my next question, Madam Mayor. Sorry to sound like I wasn't. I apologise. You've written, a safety case has been undertaken in relation to the grass runway, which requires the grass runway to be closed. That's what you've written. Was a report consultants directed to close the grass runway when the council contacted Aviation Projects?
The consultants were asked to do a safety case on the grass runway. Council had already resolved to build the fence around it, which would necessitate the closing of the grass runway anyway. Those points aside, let me make something very, very clear about the grass runway. The grass runway has been inoperable for many, many months. It is actually unsafe. It has been closed under NOTAM and it will be closed under an URSA in due course. Requiring part-time safety officers from council to make judgment calls on the suitability of a grass runway to be safe for aircraft to land, whether they're new aircraft, whether they're vintage aircraft, whatever the aircraft is, places council at a totally unacceptable risk to have that grass runway be open. We cannot tell the condition underneath that. We cannot tell if there's soft points in that by the safety officers that we're actually able to have. So there is a genuine safety need to have that grass runway closed to protect council and therefore protect the community.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. If CASA or Air Services says that the runway can't be closed, what improvements would we have to make to the grass runway to make it safe? Would it be to do with drainage or recoating it? What do you see as being necessary if we can't close it?
We can close it and we will be closing it. So the question's irrelevant.
Well, I'm just looking at a figure.
Councillor, your question has been answered. Your next question.
Well, you didn't answer it, Madam Mayor. I asked what would happen if we couldn't close it, and he's saying...
As previously outlined, we've already been in consultation with CASA and they have raised no objections. We will be closing the grass runway, so therefore your question is irrelevant.
Councillor, your next question.
Thank
I
you.
think I'll have a break. Excuse me.
Right, Madam Mayor.
No, I'm just going to have a break in Councillor Horval's question, and I was going to ask a question of my own. which I now can't remember. That was just a little bit of light relief.
Can I ask a question, please?
Because Councillor Horval hasn't even spoken to his motion yet. But yes, you can ask your question. Thank you, Councillor. I might think of my question by then.
Yeah. The relevance of the runways opening or closing, would that be to the owner of the actual airport? And who is the owner of the actual airport?
The owner of the airport's the council, and it's the council's role to make sure it operates effectively, and that is what is occurring.
Do you have a number of members of the Kempsey Flying Club?
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councillor, your point of order is?
I was asking some questions and then I was going to speak to my motion, and now you're allowing other questions before I could finish even giving my...
I take your point there, but in the meantime, because I just said that we just have a break from that line of questioning, because I did have a question that was relevant to the questions you were asking around the runway before we moved on to some of your other questions. To the General Manager, my question was, does every airport have a grass runway? Is that a prerequisite? Do you have to have a grass runway?
No, you don't have to have grass runways, and numerous grass runways across Australia have been closed for a whole range of different reasons.
Thank you. You can continue with your line of questioning, Councillor Horval.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The comments further that went on, Mr. General Manager, the project has been in the public arena for over 12 months. My specific questions about that: has the project been in the public arena in relation to the closure of the grass runway?
The closure of the grass runway is separate to this project, as I've outlined before. The original impetus for closing the grass runway was the need to put up the fence, the wildlife fence around the runway itself, which council, as you would know, there was a collision between a plane and a kangaroo on there. It resulted in a court case. And it's been on council's agenda for, I think, at least 2 years to have that fence erected. That necessitated the close of the grass runway anyway. So that discussion with the community, the information about that has been there for a considerable period of time.
Okay, thank you. So when were councillors told that the grass runway had to be closed?
Councillors are making comments here to me at the moment that the issue of the grass runway and the need to fence it because the wildlife goes back some 5 years. So at some time, it certainly was raised in the court case, which is probably 3 years ago now. So it's been notified to council on numerous occasions over the last 3 to 5 years.
Well, thank you, Mr. General Manager. When council voted on accepting the grant for fencing the airport, were we informed that that would include having to close the runway?
Council had already made that decision, so the assumption would have been made that you would have been aware of it because you'd already been informed.
Well, Madam, Mr. General Manager.
Councillor Horval, your question has been answered. Your next question.
Asking the next question, Madam Mayor. So I did not know, so I'm just wondering how many other councillors would have been aware, according to you, Mr. General Manager, that the grass runway would have to be closed?
I'm assuming that all the councillors who were following the discussions over the last 3 or 4 years would have been aware of that. I would assume you would have been aware, given the level of detail you go to with your research and that. So I'm getting lots of nods around here from the councillors that they were aware of it.
Thank you. So following on, you're saying that the project has been in the public arena. Has the project been in the public arena with regard to relocating of the buildings of the adventure park basically on or adjacent to the grass runway?
As previously mentioned, this is part of the development of the concept plans. The movement of the building from its previous concept location to its current location was undertaken primarily to move it further out of the flood area and to take advantage of the base material that is in the grass runway, which council had already previously been determined to be closed, there is no need to consult the public in relation to that matter.
Did Council, Mr General Manager, consider keeping it where the original concept plan that I saw over on the corner of Aerodrome Road, did Council consider the cost of building the buildings up in that particular concept area to the extra metre that it's going to have with its new location?
The location in its previous thing was notified once we had the flood survey, it would be going underwater by 2.5 metres. It's not a decision of council to actually make that. It's actually an operational matter to place that in the best location possible. And that's why it has actually been moved. It doesn't require a formal decision of council.
Thank you, Mr General Manager. I thought it was a metre, so I'm mistaken. I'm sorry. You further go on when I read and then 5, obtain written approval from CASA and Air Services Australia. You wrote, Council has already been liaising with relevant authorities and has obtained direct feedback from CASA. What has this feedback been, please?
The feedback has been a number of points that we need to consider as both developments progress in relation to where some of the instrumentation is located, in relation to notifying CASA should a crane go through the OLS and things of that nature.
Thank you, Mr General Manager. The closing of runway, grass runway, was proposed, I think, back in 2007, and CASA at that time said, no, you can't. How has that advice been changed, or for CASA now to agree to it?
You'd have to ask CASA that. It's up to them to make the determinations. When we've written to them and provided the safety case, they've raised no issues.
Okay. An aeroplane crashed, and this is a question about putting the fence near the runway, Mr General Manager. An aeroplane crashed in Euston last Tuesday, 1 week ago today, and 12 people were on that plane, and 24 people escaped from it, but it went through the end of the runway after an engine failure, crashed through a fence, and then caught fire. Luckily, everyone got away. Did the aviation consultants, aviation projects, give any thought to planes running into fences, causing fires, being a danger in any way?
How long's a piece of string, Madam Mayor?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the aviation consultants have given due consideration using their professional expertise as to the location and the distance of that fence.
At point 6, Mr General Manager, I asked for a report and recommendation.
I just need to let Councillor Horval continue his line of questioning, given the fact that he's probably well aware that he only gets 5 minutes. He only gets 5 minutes to speak for. So continue, Councillor Horval.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was trying to clarify the comments from the General Manager. So, Mr General Manager, on point 6, presenting a written report and recommendation to February 2022 Council on the progress of the master planning and so forth, you wrote, based on the advice above, this point is irrelevant. Is it irrelevant to have the incoming council have input on the best way forward at the airport?
Through you, Madam Mayor, part of the induction process that's already been planned out is that the councils will be provided with updates on all the major projects, and that will include the airport. So the councillors, the new council coming in, will be well advised of the status of all the projects in relation to the airport and the way it's moving forward.
Thank you, Mr General Manager. On your advice further on, you wrote the grass runway safety case document was not placed on Council's website as a result of Councillor Hall's request, was placed in line with planning consultation. Are you aware, Mr General Manager, I never asked for that document to be placed on the website?
I'm aware that you asked why it wasn't on the website.
No, I did not, Mr. General Manager. I asked, and I'll just clarify, that's why I brought this up. I asked for a copy of it to be forwarded to me by Director Mitchell, and he at first didn't know about the report, and then he found it after talking to a staff member, and he then told me that it was placed on the council's website. I was never forwarded the document, but I did ask for the document because I only became aware that there was a document saying that grass runway was to be closed, and it was in that aviation project.
Question, please,
So my
Councillor.
question to you, Mr. General Manager, is why did that misinterpretation occur? Because I only wanted to read the document and find out why we were closing the runway.
Mr. Mitchell will provide the answer to that.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, Councillor Horville, you're right. I wasn't aware of the report you were specifically referring to. That's why I asked in my email response to clarify which report. Once you clarified that, I was then able to understand which report you're referring to. At that stage, we're in the process of putting it up on the website, and that's what my second response to you indicated.
Right, thank you. I'm just asking for the document, Mr. General Manager, not for it to be on the website.
Your question
Yes.
is answered. So your next question, please.
The question on the point that was made, the master plan has been progressing in line with council decisions. Was the master plan first planned to be completed in the 2019-2020 financial year operating plan?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the plan was in the 1920 year. Council at various QBRs adjusted the timing for the master plan, and it's currently in this year's, and work, as has already been indicated, has commenced on that.
Yes, and it was deferred for a number of reasons, I presume, Mr. General Manager, along with bushfires and pandemic. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. One of the points that you've made there, Council has been liaising with the Education Department in relation to the Adventure Park, and no issues have been raised by them. So how many emails have been sent to the Education Department, and when, please?
I don't actually have an exact count of those. I can tell you the last one was actually sent this morning. We're in consultation with them at the moment about the design of the accommodation and the ablutions block for them, so they're certainly not raising any issues.
You don't see any conflict with...
Councillor, your question has been answered. Your next question is?
Yes, I was asking the next question, Madam Mayor. I apologise if it didn't sound like one. I was asking, was there any conflicts with airport usage regulations, federal ones, which cover our airport, where no educational activities can be conducted on airport land? So has that been considered as a legal aspect?
The regulation is that education facilities, i.e. schools, cannot be on airport land. It's not education activities. The Education Department has not raised any issues whatsoever and have actually worked very constructively and cooperatively with us in relation to this development. That has been made very clear in this reply.
Right. Thank you. It's possibly operational, Mr. General Manager, but I'll ask the question anyway. Have councillors and council meeting agenda items had any involvement in closing runway, the grass runway?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yeah, my understanding of the question is, has the council decision-making been involved? Is that what you asked?
On closing the runway, yes.
Yes, it has, because you made the decisions in relation to the fencing, you've made the decision in relation to the adventure park, you've made the decision in relation to accepting the grants. So council has been very actively engaged in the closure of the grass runway through its decisions.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager, for answering all my questions. Madam Mayor, may I now speak to my motion, please?
Yes, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, as I put in my report to you, councillors, I said we wouldn't build a kitchen, we wouldn't build a bathroom on a block of land and then decide to put in a plan for the house to go with those two items. You usually plan the whole thing. At the moment, the master plan is now underway, and thank you, Mr. General Manager, for clarifying that. But all these things that are physical changes at the airport should be considered, in my opinion, as part of the master plan. In the concept plan that was drawn up in 2014 to promote the airport business park, it shows aeroplanes, parking areas to the east of the terminal building, a whole lot of them, some with covered shades over them, which I was surprised to see. But there was lots of room for expansion. If we proceed with this, all these activities that are going on at the present, and as the General Manager has said in his comments, as a fluid event, we are limiting what can happen in the future, in my opinion, in that the master plan might say, this area here can be future parking, this area here can be future hangars, but we haven't got that clear plan for the whole airport. But we have these other things happening without the master plan in place. And so my motion basically says, hold up, take a breath, let's get the master planning done and make sure that all the changes at the airport owned by Kempsey Shire Council on behalf of the Kempsey Shire community, that we have a proper plan going forward. Now, the master plan not only does the physical layout, it does all the other parts of having a positive outcome financially for council, and that's what we should be looking at. We have buildings that were going to be 120 metres, I think, away from the main runway, now being brought 75 metres away from the main runway. To me, that seems a higher risk to have buildings that close. And I say that with experience. Back in 1994, I was on an aircraft landing at Kempsey Airport and the nose wheel collapsed. The pilot had done nothing wrong. The nose wheels cracked and broke off, and the plane speared off the main runway into the long grass. It would have gone through the proposed placement of the fence, and that could have caused a fire. So I'm coming at the fencing part of it as saying it needs to be further back, and it could be further back at no great extra expense, because the length of the runway is the main cost of the fence, not the end bits. And it could go back 20 or 30 metres from both sides of the main runway and make it safer for any future bingles of aeroplanes. The aviation expert report says excursions from the runway. I certainly don't want to go on any more of those excursions. So I'm asking Council to consider all of these points, the 6 points, and support them into the future. So I thank everyone for listening and hope you are considering this carefully.
Thank you, Councillor Horville. Okay, I put any dissent on the recommendation. The recommendation has been lost. Thank you, councillors. We will now move on to confidential.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Councillor Morris.
could I ask your indulgence to make a very short comment prior to going into confidential?
Yes, Councillor.
Madam Mayor, I'd just like to make the comment that I've had a lot happening in my life or in my family life in the last 2 or 3 years. I've also found it very difficult to remain focused on council activities. I find some of the priorities of council, in my opinion, are different to what I would like to see happen. Yes, there are lots of good things happening, but I think that there are a lot of other things that maybe should have a higher priority. And on that basis, I will not be contesting the election this time around. I just wanted to let the community know, thank the community for their support. I've enjoyed very much working with them, and I hope that the candidates or whichever candidates are successful find their experience as a councillor enlightening and interesting, and I hope we have a very good group of new councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. And at our next council meeting, I hope you will be here for our final council meeting, where we can also thank you for your contribution to this council. We'll now move on to Thank you. I have moved by Councillor Saul, seconded by Councillor Patterson. We're moving into confidential. Do we all agree to move into confidential? And I will ask the people that are on video if they would just check to make sure that they're
Council took the following resolutions in closed session. In relation to item 11.1 legal matters, Council resolved that the information be noted. In relation to item 11.2 Audit and Risk Committee meeting minutes, 22 September 2021, Council resolved that Council note the draft meeting minutes from the Audit and Risk Committee, 22 September 2021. In relation to item 11.3, Regional Mattress Collection and Processing, Council resolved that Council 1, in accordance with Clause 1781B and 1783B of the Local Government Regulation 2021, declined to accept any of the tenders submitted for Regional Procurement Tender SPT 352122 MNC, Mattress Collection and Processing, due to group procurement arrangements not representing best value for money for Council, and invite fresh tenders in accordance with Clause 169 of the Local Government Regulation 2021 from the tenderers that responded to Regional Procurement Tender SPT 352122 MNC, and 2, maintain the confidentiality of documents and consideration in respect of Regional Procurement Tender SPT 352122 MNC. In relation to item 11.4, Tender TQE 20/24 South Kempsey Pressure Sewer Scheme Construction, Council resolved that Council accept the lump sum tender submitted by Airy Constructions Proprietary Limited for the supply, install, construction and commissioning of the South Kempsey Pressure Sewer Scheme for a sum of $2,890,334.51, GST inclusive, in accordance with the tender submission and the tender documentation. In regards to item 11.5, Tender TQE 20/9 Provision of Switchboard Manufacturing Services, Council resolved that Council 1 accept the following tenders as a panel supply contract for the provision of switchboard manufacturing services in accordance with the tender documentation and tender submissions for a period of 2 years commencing 28 October 2021 and concluding 28 October 2023, with 2 options in Council's favour to extend for a period of 2 years each, which would result in the contract concluding as late as 28 October 2027. A. Decon Technologies Proprietary Limited. B. Mid-Coast Switchboards. In relation to item 11.6, Tender TQE 20/10 Provision of Instrumentation Services Tender, Council resolved that Council 1 accept the following tenders as a panel supply contract for the provision of instrumentation services in accordance with the tender documentation and tender submissions for a period of 2 years commencing 28 October 2021 and concluding 28 October 2023, with 2 options in Council's favour to extend for a period of 2 years each, which would result in the contract concluding as late as 28 October 2027. A. Added Value Instrumentation Services Proprietary Limited. B. Haztech Automation Proprietary Limited. And C. Premier Calibrations Proprietary Limited. In relation to item 11.7, Tender TQE 20/11 Provision of Electrical, Telemetry and Automation Services, Council resolved that Council 1 accept the following tenders as a panel supply contract for the provision of electrical, telemetry and automation services in accordance with the tender documentation and tender submissions for a period of 2 years commencing 28 October 2021 and concluding 28 October 2023, with 2 options in Council's favour to extend for a period of 2 years each, which would result in the contract concluding as late as 28 October 2027. A. 360 Engineering Proprietary Limited. B. Alliance Automation Proprietary Limited. C. Big Dog Industries. D. Hunter H2O Holdings Proprietary Limited. E. Local Electrical Contractors Proprietary Limited. F. MACLEAY Electrical Services. G. Macquarie Engineers Proprietary Limited. H. Safe Group Automation Proprietary Limited. I. SAT Proprietary Limited. And J. Star Electrical Co. Proprietary Limited.
Thank you, Manager Thorogood. That concludes the October meeting of Kempsey Shire Council. Thank you, councillors.